Welcome to the Inside Carolina Coast to Coast podcast. We are sponsored, as always, by Jon T-Shirt and JonT-Shirt.com. I'm your host, Jon Seiglie. I'm joined by Sherrell McMillan and Sean Moran. It's been a while since we talked, guys, but there has been some recent news. I know I say that every podcast, but we try to at least keep this thing as topical as possible, even during the down season. Before we get to it, just want to remind everyone, I mentioned them already, but Jon T-Shirt and JonT-Shirt.com. Make sure that if you need your Carolina gear, you head there. They're a local business. They're really great to support during these times. So make sure that you get anything that you could want Carolina related from Johnny T-Shirt. Jumping into the actual podcast, guys, a lot of this is going to be touching on some subjects that Sherrell mentioned in last week's Weekly Scoop. For those that may not know, it is a feature that runs about every week on Inside Carolina on the Basketball Premium message board, in which Sherrell, Greg, Ben, the whole crew really add in all of their accumulated tidbits on what is going on with Carolina basketball, geared mostly towards recruiting. So without getting a little bit too much into it, because I want to encourage everyone to actually go and read the full article, the highlight of the piece I felt was the kind of an introduction to Mr. Skyy Clark, who is a combo guard from the class of 2022. Now, I mean, I know, Sean, you cover recruiting a lot more than the average fan. Sherrell, we'll get to you in a second. Me, I had not really heard of Skyy Clark at all before this, but he is a very highly rated recruit actually in that class. So, Sean, when you saw that Skyy Clark was mentioned in the Weekly Scoop, what was your initial reaction to that?
Sure. Well, I know Sherrell had mentioned his name previously, and there had been just, his name had been thrown around on the message boards. I was a little surprised when it happened. But at the same time, it was interesting to see that a 2022 offer was going out rather than another 2021,
Yeah.
Which makes him the third offered player in the class. Also a player outside of the state of North Carolina. So, I'm kind of regretful that I didn't take my opportunities this past season to go see Clark play because he was in the LA area. Since his move to Nashville, so we'll be playing at Brentwood Academy, but definitely had a very strong 2 years in the LA area. And as you mentioned, combo guard, so seems to be kind of what they're focused on, at least initially, of guys that can handle the ball. But for him, he can really score. Good shooter, can attack the basket, versatile. It's a very intriguing player, ranked number 22 by 24/7 right now. And once again, as Sherrell mentioned in his articles, has some athletic bloodlines with his father playing football. And I think for him, he's already, I believe, taken a visit to Kentucky. So some people have Kentucky as a leader, but at the same time, for UNC to really start those offers right now, I think is good, because last year, I think Baldwin and Banchero came right after the Peach Jam. So, a little bit later than right now.
Yeah, so Sherrell, I mean, when you were kind of hearing that Skyy was going to be someone that the Tar Heels were going to be heavily recruiting in that class of 2022, what was kind of the background information, and just provide a little bit of a tidbit about his recruiting process for the UNC fans listening to the podcast here?
Well, I have to be completely honest. It's, with everything that's going on, it's been very hard to gather information. So a lot of what we do is to take from a head coach in the North Carolina area. It's about relationships. So it's about going to events and meeting parents and talking to parents and talking to coaches and kids, and then following up with calls and texts. And, it's very much a lot of that. And when you lose that human touch, it's a lot more difficult to really get information. We got a little lucky with Clark in that we were able to talk to some people to be able to talk to him kind of immediately after the offer. And honestly, we're still playing catch up with 2022. And I think the North Carolina staff is ahead on 2022. It's just that we don't have the normal cues and tells that we typically get from them at events and things like that about what they might do. So it's been a little more difficult to gather information. I say all that to say we didn't know really much anything about his North Carolina recruitment before the offer. We knew that Roy Williams called him, night one, which is a big deal in itself and shows that Carolina was serious. But it went from being able to call on June 15th to an offer within 2.5 weeks. So I think that tells you just how much they like him. And, some of this is in the scoop, so I don't want to share too much premium information, but I'll share this. he basically, Roy Williams told Clark and his family that he hasn't watched him on film, and we know he hasn't seen him live. He said that he trusts his assistant coaches, mainly Steve Robinson, who I think is the lead kind of recruiter with Clark in his evaluation, and they really like some of the work he's done as a person, and they really are just kind of gravitate towards him not only as a person but also as a player. So I think that's kind of where the recruitment is, and it's funny because after talking to Clark and to his dad, the night of the offer, following up, we've learned that he is a reclass candidate into 2021. And so North Carolina has 3 offers out in 2022, Caleb Houston, Jaden Bradley, and now Skyy Clark. And 2 of those are known to be guys who could possibly reclassify into 2021. And so it goes to Sean's point that right now, there's only one person in 2022 who we think is definitely going to stay there that has a UNC offer. And so you probably will see them be a little more aggressive in 2022 with offers moving forward.
Well, that was going to be my next topic, is speaking about the class of 2022. You mentioned Jaden Bradley, who is the other combo guard. That is one of those 3 names that the Heels have actually offered. So I think it shows that the staff is really trying to, again, keep that pipeline of high-level combo guards, point guards going. But if Skyy is able to potentially reclassify to 2021, that also fits with that class, because we've seen the Heels really prioritize guards in for that recruiting as well. So, I mean, Sean, looking at kind of maybe a little bit of a bird's eye picture, how do you think Skyy fits in with how Coach Williams and his staff are really trying to make these classes both in 2021 and 2022, just in case if Skyy were to reclassify?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think in terms of the class of 2021, the biggest need is that combo guard position. And once again, even if you get one, especially some of the guys that are recruiting, they could be one and done. So it's obviously difficult trying to plan, one class ahead, let alone 2, and everything that can happen with the team development, the player development, especially not seeing them. So, I think right now, obviously, with their offers, have been focused on the guards, and then guards and wings, and seeing how those will potentially, if there's a reclass or any other news. So, for me, I think seeing what other guards come out of this, and then at what point do they start moving toward big men? Because at that point, right now, really the class of 2021, there's not a real need for a big. Even if somebody were to leave, there could still be 2, probably 3, 3 guys. So, but then once you get a year removed, now you start to open some things up. So I would expect them in 2022 start to move to the bigs at some point. And once again, without all the July live events coming up, it's going to be a little more difficult to see who those will be. But I think you can kind of tell by who they were calling early on in mid-June.
And what do you think about Skyy's fit there, Rel? Like, I mean, how do you think that the staff may be considering him as they go through and really make their priorities for the 2021 and 2022 classes?
I think it's very similar to what they did in 2021, was kind of identify a few core guys at the beginning. I think last year, Pat Baldwin was one of them. Of course, I'm going to drop plays. Kennedy Chandler was another one of them. Kind of 3 or 4 guys who they, Harrison Ingram's another one, who they say, this is our guy in this class. And then as time goes on, and depending on how they feel about those particular players, you'll see the pool expand. And it's just going to be a little difficult, because once you start getting to 2022, you're not quite sure how great the high school film is. Like, it's one thing to have high school film on a rising junior, or, someone who played on travel ball a lot last year. But, most of these 2022 kids were playing either 15s or 16s last summer, and no one's recording 15s or 16s really with any great depth or reliability. And then are people really recording sophomores in high school, and the coaches have a great film of that? So I wonder about that aspect of it too, because it's like, it's easy to say, hey, they just need to watch film and see if they like the guy, but is the film actually available? I think it's something that's going to start happening with the 2022 class if there's not any kind of live basketball here over the next couple of months.
Yeah, good stuff, guys. Anything else to add to that, Sean? Or
I mean, I think one thing in terms of watching the film and the level of competition, and that's the part of really just trying to see what you see on film and then have to project that, because that is such a difficult thing. Of you watch a high school game and the kid's getting to the rim and looks pretty athletic, and then you know jump up to AAU and it's a lot more difficult. The kids are taller, longer, more athletic. Maybe now he's pulling up for jump shots, and then you go even to USA basketball, and now maybe the kid's just a jump shooter because he can't even really do anything off the dribble against that top level of competition. So, it's a lot. It'll be interesting to see. Once again, we talked about it before, but who's really studying the tape and who has a good opinion and good projections on these guys.
And I just wanted to add too. You talked about the fit, and I kind of dodged it a little bit, but I think he
Yeah.
fits well. From what I know of him. Again, we just haven't. We weren't able to. I don't want to say too much because we weren't able to see him in April or June or July like we normally would have, and kind of form an opinion over not just film, but over 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 live evaluations. And from what I know about him, what scouts say, what I've seen from him on film, it seems like he's a kind of bigger bodied kind of combo guard. And I think Roy Williams likes that. One, because, excuse me, he can really push tempo. He's got the size, like Sean said, to finish in traffic. And he kind of is able to finish in kind of weird angles that aren't always comfortable. And that is a skill that Kobe White kind of mastered. Like a lot of the stuff Kobe did at times was unorthodox. And I think unorthodox is very hard to prepare for because there's a lot of improvisation there. And I think Clark definitely has that going for him. And when we talked to him, we talked about how much he loves defense. And, kind of the way to Roy Williams' heart is rebounding and playing defense. And I think that is something that they like about him as well. So those couple of things added to the fact that he's a pretty good shooter in high school, I think just led to the offer. And, that's why they see him as someone who can really fit in the backcourt and the way they like to do things.
It will be interesting to see too if he does reclassify. I mean, that's a potential entire year worth of evaluations that staffs, recruiting analysts are just not going to have. And I mean, we have no clue what the next years can even hold. So the fact that he's thinking about reclassifying, I mean, it's going to be quite a little bit just kind of on faith almost. But clearly, like Coach Williams said, he trusts his assistants. He liked what he's heard. So Skyy Clark is someone that Tar Heel fans can keep an eye on and just remember the name over the next couple of recruiting cycles. So the other name that was mentioned in the scoop was Lucas Taylor, who is a class of 2021. He's a wing player. Sherrell mentioned that Coach Williams wants guys that can shoot, and it sounds like Taylor fits that mold. He seems like kind of a late bloomer. I know that he's only a 3-star guy right now on the 247, but I mean, Sherrell, is he really just someone that the staff is keeping an eye on because, again, just in case they need to find someone that is just known as a solid 3-point outside shooter? Do you think that that's kind of the role that they envision for Taylor?
I think that's part of it. I think, moving forward, if you look at the roster, the only person above, I guess, 6'4", who is known to have, marksman type shooting ability is going to be Puff Johnson moving forward. I guess you can count Walker Kessler in that as well. So 2, but he's a post player, so it's a little bit different. And I think what the pitch is, were they to really get serious with Lucas, would be, hey, we need a 6'6", 6'7" type guy who can come in and shoot and kind of do a lot of things. I think that's the pitch to Caleb Houston as well, who's a 2022 player who might reclass to 2021. And I think they're open. I think they really just want to see how good he is. They plan to watch him live if the tournament still happens. He's supposed to be in a tournament in Myrtle Beach this coming weekend. So if it happens, there's a live stream, and they've told him that they're going to watch him. So I think they just want to see him live and see how he plays. He definitely was on the list of those who they would have watched in April. He plays for Gardner Road, who also has DeMarco Dunn, who has a UNC offer at the moment. So all that to say, I think he's someone they're intrigued by, but they want to see more from. Very similar to Angelo Brizzi, who we talked about on this podcast a few times. But, Taylor, for the things that North Carolina likes from their wings, he seems to be a good fit. The people around him talk about him a lot. And then from a off-the-court standpoint, he is the type of player that Roy Williams would probably gravitate towards. Very mature, kind of knows what he wants in life. One of his coaches called him kind of an A to B guy, which is I'm going to do A to get to B, and I'm going to do B to get to C. He doesn't really kind of dabble in anything else. So I think that kind of one track mind when it comes to basketball is something that UNC likes, and I think that makes Taylor someone who they're interested in.
So have you watched much film on Taylor, Sean? Do you have any type of like just a quick recruiting breakdown that you might be able to give on him?
Yeah, I definitely haven't watched nearly as much as I would like to, or hopefully will do if there's an offer. I mean, I think as you guys both mentioned, the shooting is something that stands out right away. And Sherrell mentioned in the article was kind of the high arcing shot, but at the same time, he also shoots right from his shoulder, pretty low, which I could see. It's a pretty quick release, but in terms of it potentially, having to make some adjustments to that to get it up a little higher. But his shooting ability and once again his size and versatility look very intriguing. So I think as hopefully I can get to watch more film, both high school and AAU, as well as everybody else, it's trying to see, is he a Wake Forest guy or is he a UNC type talent? And there's a big difference between the two. And if you're thinking he's a UNC talent, you have to be pretty sure on that because you don't want to miss, as we've seen what's happened, in the past with a few players.
Sean with the dig at the Wake Forest basketball program, kicking them.
And nothing against Wake Forest. I just know they'd offered him early, and there's a substantial talent gap between the two programs right now.
I was gonna say kicking them while they're down. Yeah, the Deacons are not having a great run of form here lately. But let me ask you a follow-up question, Sean, because Sherrell mentioned that Taylor does have kind of that size that UNC likes to have in their wings, that 6'6", 6'7". I mean, right now, Carolina really, especially last season, didn't really have someone that fit that mold. I mean, you had like Leaky Black, who has the height, but Leaky is really not that traditional wing. So in the Roy Williams style offense and what we know that the Tar Heels are going to want, do you think that is a position that they are really trying to fill where they can have that kind of more tough, athletic, defensive, maybe minded, taller wing moving, I guess, as a recruiting real target?
I mean, I think similar to you can never have enough point guards. You can never have enough wings that can shoot the ball, especially ones that can do stuff off the dribble. Tomorrow for the premium, the fit, Harrison Ingram will be coming out, and we kind of touch on the fit of that position because, right now you have two guys coming in with Puff and Walton, and both have, both are coming in as shooters, but really how do they adapt to college and will it be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? How long will it take them to make a mark? So, perhaps one of them comes in right now and makes an immediate mark, but I think you have to cover your bases by, you can't put all your chips in, on those two right now. So, and once again, you can always play, two at the same time or even, go small if you have to. So I think it's a definite need. I would still say the 2-guard or combo guard, no matter if it's a 21 or 22 class, is a top need, but until something gets proven, there is a need there, but there are also players at that position. So it's kind of it'll be interesting to see how that works itself out.
Yeah, Rel, do you think that Taylor is a player that maybe brings something a little bit different compared to like Puff or some of the other guys that the Heels have been recruiting for the wing position or are expecting to have on campus when that 2021 class does arrive?
From what I know about him, I think he kind of fits very similarly to Walton and to Puff. I haven't had a chance to watch him a ton, similar to Sean. The first time we've ever talked to him was this past weekend. And the first time really we talked to any of his coaches or anything was this past week. So still kind of forming an opinion, but, talking to those folks, he does seem kind of in that same slot as those other guys, not someone who would come in, as a freshman and take over. I think UNC, to put it delicately, I think they have guys who they know are going to be around for a couple of years. And now, for lack of a better term, they're going like star chasing with guys like Harrison Ingram and Hunter Salas. And I think having depth like Puff and having depth like Kerwin allows them to do that. Now, whether or not they ultimately get that, I think, at worst case, they'll have Puff and they'll have Kerwin to be able to shoot, to be able to do things, play the 2, the 3, the 4 to some degree. So that versatility is important. I think Taylor definitely would be that, but he wouldn't be someone who would come in and kind of, move those guys out of their roles or out of their positions. A long
All right.
way to get to a short answer.
Yeah, no worries. All right, Sean, anything else? Any final thoughts on Taylor?
Not on Taylor, but if this tournament does happen next week and there is a live stream, I think it'll be a good chance just to watch also Taylor, but also Dunn, who I think that'll be really important to see him at a high level and how he adapts. And maybe there's some other guys, and once again you see kind of these random tournaments popping up and being live streamed, but especially with no Peach Jam and other things coming up, at least kind of getting some action to watch will be good.
And what are the scheduled dates again for this tournament, Sherrell? When is it planned to
It
take place?
starts allegedly starting July 9th.
Okay, so July 9th.
So yeah, so we'll see. But
All right.
as of yesterday, it was still on.
All right. It's something for Carolina fans to keep an eye on. I mean, it's a great opportunity to see some recruits finally after a long break. But guys, let's go ahead and take a very quick commercial break. Just wanted to remind everyone that if you are listening to this podcast, please rate, subscribe, leave us a comment if you like what we're doing. If there's something that we can improve on, please let us know as well, especially if you're listening on iTunes. It really helps us out if you can give us a 5-star rating if you feel that we've earned it. That gets us even more listeners, helps broaden the Inside Carolina podcast audience. Greatly appreciate that. If you're watching on YouTube, same thing. Please rate, comment, subscribe. Really just helps us out across all platforms. And also, I already mentioned them about twice in this podcast already, but I'll mention them for the third time because they are just that good. Giant T-shirt at giantt.com, your place to go for Carolina gear. Father's Day has come and went, but if you, for some reason, are still looking for anything for a dad, brother, anyone in your life there, need some late gifts, Giant T-shirt has you covered, especially with the athletic seasons hopefully starting soon. Giant T-shirt is going to have all the new stuff in. They have online shopping as well at giantt.com, where you can get 10% off of your orders if you are a subscriber to Inside Carolina. You also get that 10% off if you shop at the store on Franklin Street, where Giant T-shirt has been in business for decades. They are an absolute icon there on Franklin Street. And if you need someone to support during these tough times, like I said earlier, Giant T-shirt is a local business. They would really appreciate it. They have been longtime friends of Inside Carolina and longtime friends to all of Carolina fans. So that's Giant T-shirt and giantt.com, your place to go for Carolina gear. And we're back with the Inside Carolina Coast to Coast podcast. Jon Seiglie here with Sherrell McMillan and Sean Moran. All right, so the next topic that I wanted to talk with you guys about was Christian Kealing. Because a couple Carolina fans noticed that he actually was playing in a live basketball tournament, which was a great thing to see. I believe, Sean, you said it was called the TBT tournament, literally the basketball tournament. I had not even heard of this thing before. So give us a little bit of background on the TBT and then just why it was something that Carolina fans might have been interested in for Christian Kealing's sake.
Yeah, and I didn't get much chance this weekend to watch it with 4th of July, but there will be live basketball going forward for the next week or so with some, pretty talented teams. And this has been going on since 2014. The winning team gets $1 million that gets split up between the players and coaches. And I think last year an Ohio State team won it with a few ringers. The first year is Notre Dame. And then in between that, it's been all overseas teams. But UNC really has never had much of a presence in there. So yesterday, Christian Kealing was in and he was playing against Team CP3, which had a bunch of players from the North Carolina area. And the team lost, but he had 25 points, so leading scorer for the team, and was just hitting shots from everywhere. So he was kind of continuing on where he was playing, really the last half of the ACC season. The one thing, I mean, you notice when you're watching or even the highlights, he was hitting the jumpers, a foot or two inside the 3-point line with ease, but was also very comfortable from the 3-point line. I think part of last year he wasn't as comfortable getting over the rim on his shots. And this time it looked like he had a little more arc, and he looked very comfortable. Good spring in his step, and if he had gotten the ball a few more times at the end, they might have won in advance. But it was good to see him in limited, only one game, and will be interesting to see where he ends up playing next year.
Yeah, I mean, it's great exposure, and Christian did have a great game, like you mentioned, top scorer. I mean, Sherrell, with these types of tournaments, it's really cool for the fans to be able to see guys that maybe will not be playing in the NBA, but will still have basketball careers somewhere else. And I mean, really, for Christian Kealing, the fact that he showed out like this, I mean, there's really no negative to it at all.
Yeah, and right now when there's no tape, Christian Keeling has new tape out for coaches to watch. And obviously probably not the NBA or anything, but there's so many leagues around the world where you can make a great living and play pretty high level basketball. And I would imagine that, Sean talked about the international presence with this tournament. I would imagine that there are a lot of coaches bored with nothing to do around the world watching the one live basketball game in the United States. And Christian Keeling just happened to have a great game. So it could be one of those things where just, he had the opportunity. He played really well, because I don't even know if this team, I might be wrong. So if you listen to this, am I wrong? And I'm wrong, I'm sorry. I think this team wasn't even supposed to be in it, but another team had several players test positive for COVID. And so they had to drop out of the tournament. And so Keeling was added to the team at the last minute, or the team was added at the last minute. There was some confluence of events that allowed him to play, and he took advantage of the opportunity. So you feel happy for him for that, because he did have a tough season. It started off okay, and then got really rough there in the middle, and then he kind of crescendoed out. But you hope that he just has a chance to keep playing basketball and earn a living doing it.
Yeah, and there are a lot of Carolina fans. I mean, Viplis talked with Jawad Williams, I believe, and Jawad talked about how he has played abroad and how great of an experience it is. I mean, it's just really cool to see all the Tar Heel players continue their careers and to do tournaments like this. And I really think that you saw in this TBT tournament probably what the ceiling for Christian Keeling is. And it's clearly a player who, like Sean said, can hit threes, who's comfortable just shooting inside the arc. And so, I think that's a lot of Carolina fans are wishing Christian the best. And like I said, it was just really cool to see some live basketball. And as Sherrell put it, to get some tape out there. So I guess then the next thing that we can talk about is something that Sean mentioned a little bit earlier when he talked about the fit. I don't know if anyone listening to this podcast knows about that feature that's currently running on InsideCarolina.com. But Sean, why don't you give us just a real quick background on the fit, and then let's talk about the player that was the subject of that feature that just released a couple days ago, I think on July the 1st.
Sure. So currently we're going through all the players that have scholarship offers. So first the class of 2021, and then the class of 2022. And right now on the recruiting board, they all have evaluations, but right now we're just going forward and looking at their background, evaluation, but also trying to project how is UNC going to be from that specific position, and then how does that player actually fit, or could they fit within the team. So I think it's an interesting exercise. It kind of replaces if we were out at Peach Jam or Top 100, would be doing articles on them anyway, in terms of what schools are they looking at, et cetera. And, has allowed me to kind of go a little bit deeper into some of these players with their high school and back to some of their AAU tape. But the first two players we did were Kennedy Chandler and Patrick Baldwin. I think in terms of the chances they end up at UNC is debatable, but in terms of Hunter Salas, we did on Wednesday, I think from a position standpoint as well as a fit standpoint is, you couldn't really ask for something better. So for him, a combo guard, which I think we've talked about, good size, good length. I think he's pretty underranked right now. And I'm forgetting at the top of my head, but I think 24/7 has him in the low teens or 20s. And I think he could be a top 10 player. And wouldn't be surprised to see him be a one and done type one at that. So after Kobe White, Kobe White, Caleb Love, but, potential one and done player. And I think in terms of everything Sherrell has mentioned, that he is very interested in UNC and UNC is very interested in him. And I think a player comparison that we've talked about is DeJounte Murray, just due to his size and length. I think a 6'9" wingspan, not the greatest outside shooter. DeJounte Murray shot 29% from three at Washington in his 1 year. And I think Salas is a little better than that, a little more comfortable off the dribble, but somebody that, is very comfortable with his versatility and can get to the rim for some highlight dunks. So I think as the fit goes, tomorrow Harrison Ingram, I guess when this comes out, Harrison Ingram will be out, who I think is another good fit, but I think it's going to be hard to top Salas in that regard.
Yeah, Salas, according to the article here, is actually the number 19 ranked player, Sean. So you were right. You got
It's been a few days since I did the article, so I couldn't remember exactly.
That's all right. You got
either
the
way. I think he's a top 10 guy.
That's very high praise. I mean, Sherrell, you've been following Salas's recruitment for a while now. And I mean, I think one of the bigger things is like Sean said, if Carolina were to land him, they would be getting someone that would fit right into how Coach Williams wants to structure the team for his season and moving forward. So, I mean, hearing about, all the stats and everything that Sean put into the article, and again, that's on InsideCarolina.com, premium basketball message board. Please go read that, and you can get all that awesome information. But just in terms of the recruiting class, Rel, I mean, if you had to maybe pick one guy that you think Carolina could land, would you put Salas probably towards the top of your list there?
I think so. And, a lot of this is still TBD because we don't know how the pandemic is going to affect how players, think about staying closer to home or going elsewhere. So Salas is from Nebraska. Again, it's 6'4", depending upon who you ask, 6'5", guard, depending on it was 7 o'clock or 7 p.m. or 7 a.m. But, he's around that height from Nebraska, the highest rated player out of Nebraska ever. And we're pretty sure, I haven't been able to confirm, but we're pretty sure he's the first player from Nebraska to have a UNC basketball offer. So he will be a part of some trivia moving forward for Carolina offers and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think they have a good shot with him. It just, a lot of it depends on whether or not he's able to take official visits, when the recruiting period opens up, just those type of things. Because he's taken visits, I believe, to Gonzaga and to Nebraska. Those were kind of his two trips. In addition to that, Creighton is up there because they're a hometown school. And then Kansas is not far away either. So Kansas is the closest blue blood. It's the blue blood that's also offered him. He doesn't have Kentucky or Duke offers, I would say, just yet. But that's kind of the two highest profile programs that have offered him, Carolina and Kansas. So I would think those schools above the rest, Creighton, hometown Nebraska, Kansas, Gonzaga, and Carolina are the ones who kind of will ultimately be his destination, one of those five. Sorry, go ahead.
Or the G League.
Or the G League, yeah. I mean, that is always an option too, especially if they start adding more teams, to the adding more select teams than they have now. All that to say, yeah, I think Salas is a great fit. I'll give this away from Sean's story, the fit, just having him beside RJ Davis, because we haven't mentioned RJ Davis yet in this podcast.
How dare us?
We are contractually obligated to mention him, but that way he would be such a great fit beside him, and they would really, really be able to push tempo with those two starting in the backcourt. I think that'd be a tremendous fit. And then defensively, I think he has a ton of potential as well that he can tap into. And with any high school player, it's just a matter of focus and really just know-how when it comes to defense, just focus and really trying to do it. And I think sometimes at a high school level, especially when you're someone as gifted as him, scoring is what you do. And so your coach may say, hey, we need you to score. So just still play hard, but just don't play your hardest on defense. And, in college, it's different. So I look forward to seeing his defensive potential no matter where he goes.
I think I saw both of y'all's eyes just light up when you mentioned Salas and RJ Davis playing together. Sean, would that be just a fit, a match made in heaven there?
It would. And I think one of the things in terms of Chandler, taking out, the percentages he chooses UNC, Chandler Davis, you have a pretty small backcourt. It would be, quick as can be on offense, but defensively could probably be taken advantage of. Salas Davis, you have, both guards that can dribble the ball, but defensively you have Salas that could probably, help out or, add that. But I think, yeah, the two of them would be, that's kind of my dream backcourt for that year.
Well, let's not get Tar Heel fans' hopes up too high, though. I mean, it's like Sherrell said, there's a long time to go here. But at least it's definite that there's some mutual interest there between Salas and UNC. So we're just going to have to see how that develops. So to wrap up the podcast, though, guys, I wanted to do something real quick. This is kind of unscripted here, but it was an idea that I had for the last podcast that we unfortunately had to scrap just due to the timing. But a all-time Tar Heel great, Vince Carter, retired from the NBA a little bit over, I think it may be about 2 weeks ago now. But I mean, just an incredible career. Every Tar Heel fan loves Vince. So I thought it'd be pretty cool just to go around and give just your favorite memory of Vince Carter. It may be the first time that you saw him. Doesn't necessarily have to be a UNC memory, but just to kind of give Vince a little icy shout out here. I thought we'd just go around the room. So I'm going to do any, mini, miny, mo, and Sean, you're going first.
Sure. So, I mean, I think there's a few things that pop out. One is the dunk contest in the NBA that he won. I mean, I think he's been played for so long. You kind of, had recently, obviously older, turned into more of a 3-point shooter, but with just how crazy athletic he was and how smooth he was, I think he took a lot of criticism for, people not talking about how he didn't always play hard, but I think that was due to just how smooth he was, which is rare given his size, athleticism, and shooting ability. I think from a UNC perspective, you always go to the missed dunk in the Dean Dome, and I remember I think I was in middle school watching that, and I mean, just the power that you saw from that, even though it didn't go in, was pretty amazing. And then another thing that always pops in my mind, for him coming in, he was the more highly touted player over Jamison, but it was Jamison who had the more productive freshman year. And I remember, I think it was the first ever edition of ESPN magazine. I remember picking it up in the bookstore and looking, flipping through it and seeing a Jamison Carter photo from them being on the UNC campus, and just kind of talking about how the roles had reversed. But then a few years later, they went back to back, I think, in the NBA draft, and both had long and lucrative careers. So a lot of memories, and it's kind of crazy how long he played, but just a testament to how he adapted, in the NBA and how he maintained himself.
All right. Ron, what about you, man?
So the first thing that comes to my head, honestly, when you say that, I mean, if there had been like video and NBC wasn't hoarding it for themselves, it would have been the dunk over Frederick Weiss in the Olympics. But because there wasn't video, you had to like illegally download it back in the day. I go to the dunk he had when he was with the Nets over Alonzo Mourning. So Iron Eagle, Jen Spernarkle on the call. He gets the ball in the corner, goes behind his back, and just like if you're listening to this, he just cocks it over his head and just eliminates Alonzo Mourning. And to me, it was like the perfect Vince Carter moment, because he was excited when it happened, but he wasn't too excited. And you're like, you should be more excited. You just like destroyed Alonzo Mourning's career. Just an incredible dunk. One of the top 10 facials like ever in the history of like basketball. So I think of that one. And then just a personal moment, like I think of the Wake Forest game at Carolina where he kind of dunked on Tim Duncan, and he kind of reverse alley-oop, I think it was. My brother went to Carolina, full disclosure, so I was visiting him, for that weekend, and he took me to the game. He took me to a lot of games, but I remember that one just because we were so excited to see Vince Carter, because you just never knew what the guy was going to do, and I think that was his sophomore year. So he was just really kind of emerging, because he struggled for most of his freshman year, and then kind of the light bulb went off at some point during his sophomore season. So he was really starting to become Vince Carter at that point. And so we got to see it, and it was just, the building was crazy. The energy was crazy. So I remember those probably two moments above anything else.
I mean, I think, one thing to add is just, if Vince had come up now, where he's a top 5 guy, he's going one and done. And how long does it take him to develop versus having some time to grow? And when he did go, he was ready to play right off the bat. Versus now, if you're not, excelling right at the beginning, you're a bust, and you're still going pro, and you're sitting the bench, and so it's kind of fascinating just to think the what ifs, and obviously for him, he had the patience and did it, and then turned it into a long career. But when he went, he was ready.
Yeah, we ran an IC story about his recruitment. We talked to his high school coach about that, and his high school coach was like, "Yeah, we knew Carolina was the right fit when he wasn't playing a lot as a freshman because he wasn't doing the things that he needed to do." So to them, that was vindication that they made the right decision because, he came down really to Florida State and Carolina with Michigan and Duke in Florida in there as well, but really it was Florida State and Carolina. So I always thought that was interesting that he embraced, eventually. I don't think he embraced it as a freshman, but he embraced the idea that, sitting and learning, paid off. And, he was able to stay in the NBA probably because of that for, 20 years.
Yeah. I mean, my memories are, number one, the missed dunk. Number two, dunking over a 7-foot French guy. And then the third thing, just on the personal level, Vince and that team in 98, that was actually the first game that I ever witnessed live. The first Carolina basketball game, because I lived in the mountains of North Carolina, and it was a long trek between there and Chapel Hill, and my parents just could not afford to make that trip very often. So we actually went to Atlanta because it was only a couple hours away, and watched them beat the crap out of a pretty decent Yellow Jackets team, I think, in 98. But I just watching that team play, that's still the ultimate, I think. Carolina fans, I mean, the Kendall Marshall team is probably a what if they had stayed healthy, but that 98 team, I mean, God, they should have won the championship. It still hurts, even to this day. Let's wrap it up with this, and this is going to be a quick yes or no question for you guys. Will UNC ever have another player like Vince Carter? Do you think that anyone like him will ever come through the high school college ranks again? Sherrell, I started with Sean last time, so you're up first for this one.
No.
All right. I agree with that. Sean, what about you?
I would say no, would agree with you, because if there is, he'll be not going to college.
Yeah, it's so different now. Like he just, even if he did go to college, if he didn't play immediately, he would just like leave and go work out until it was time to go to the NBA. Like the world is just so much different than it was when Coach Smith recruited, Vince to Carolina. Just so much different.
Yeah. I just think just that combination of skill, athleticism, I mean, it's going to be really hard to see someone with those talents come through just any college for a while. Vince was unique, and I mean, his NBA career, it speaks for itself. Guy's a legend. So we'll go ahead and wrap up the podcast with that, though. Really appreciate both of y'all taking the time to speak with me. Sherrell, you and I will sit here in North Carolina, enjoy these people shooting off fireworks still, even though it's July 5th, and Sean can enjoy the rest of his day in sunny Cali.
We got people shooting off fireworks here too, so
don't get me started. Don't get me started.
All right, you guys, have a good one.
All right, thanks.